CEL, Communications and Entertainment Limited.
Captain Mark Phillips on classic lines, 4 times winner of this major championship, and on this young horse that could well be one of the fancied winners this year.
I think when you get to that level, you get the World Championships. It's the one competition in 4 years. If you make a mistake, that's it.
Really attacking this fence, and right to the bottom. Oh! What a crashing fall, but the horse delighted to say none the worse.
Princess Anne was the 7th to start of the 4.5-mile cross-country course with its 35 fences.
Out of the second part, our Great Ovation horse on which he won badminton 2 years running in 71 and 72, but in fact...
And here's our next competitor, the very recognisable Mark Phillips from England, representing the 6 international competitors.
When I'm teaching, I'm only teaching maybe 10 or 20 people at a time, whereas this way I can get and preach the gospel to considerably more.
Keep hard. Oh, look at the reins flapping! You sinner!
The outstanding ability as an equestrian and remarkable talent as an instructor are clearly shown in this newly released video series by British Olympic gold medalist and 4 times badminton winner, Captain Mark Phillips. The series begins with the delights and pitfalls of your first pony. Followed by the important considerations involved in selection of your horse. The programs teach step by step how to prepare any horse in basic flat work, no matter where its future lies. This essential groundwork will equip your horse to go on to show jump, event, dressage, polo, or for the sheer pleasure of riding a well-prepared horse. The initial training is covered in 2 half-hour tapes in the series, Basic Flat Work 1 and 2. Introduction to show jumping for the young horse is covered extensively in Show Jumping 1. Show Jumping 2 and 3 apply to the more advanced horse and rider combinations. Detail of the necessary preparation for horse trials is presented by Captain Mark Phillips in a series of 3 tapes, in which a training program is put forward showing how to prepare the horse and rider to competition level. While in no way designed to replace the actual instructor, they enable the rider to revise the correct training and preparation of their horse. The complete and detailed content of each half-hour program enables the learning rider to use the tapes over and over again, and in so doing, move correctly towards whichever area of horsemanship the rider's interests may lie. Married to another outstanding equestrian, Her Royal Highness the Princess Anne, they make a formidable competing duo.
But actually, it's been over the years, it's been a great help that in training and things at home, if you had a problem with a horse, and to be able to turn to the other and to ask opens down to get on and to see what she feels and suggesting some way of improving it. Sort of thing. It's been a great help. So. The day-to-day care of your horse is not only a pleasure, but also a responsibility. And this responsibility is best understood by remembering that you are the centre of your horse's world. You're his doctor, his teacher, his housekeeper, his cook and policeman, his partner, his friend. In short, you are everything to your horse. Simply, what this means is that man, having removed the horse from his natural environment, has to accept full responsibility for his horse's health, happiness, and well-being. This responsibility begins with providing the horse with a comfortable and secure environment.
The prime considerations with respect to satisfactory stabling are a well-drained, dry foundation, well ventilated and with a good supply of natural light. Whatever the materials used, the building must be very soundly constructed, bearing in mind it is required to confine a very strong animal of up to half a ton in weight. When investigating a new stable, always check for any dangers, such as nails or hooks or other projections on which the horse might injure himself. The interior walls and fittings must be as such to minimize the risk of any possible injury. Glass windows should always be avoided or protected with bars. Doors and door latches should be strong and designed in such a way that the horse cannot work them open and escape. When considering the safety aspect of a horse's stable and environment, one rule of thumb should always prevail. That is, that if something might possibly go wrong, then it probably will. Never take a risk with your horse's safety. Apart from the horse's safety, his comfort must also be borne in mind. The stable must be of sufficient size to allow free movement. Normally 12 feet or 3.6 meters square can be considered a minimum for a larger horse. The stable should be so positioned as to allow plentiful of air and sunlight while providing shelter from extremes of weather. It's also important that the horse has a reasonable view of surrounding activity to keep him happy and interested. An essential part of your horse's comfort in the stable is his bedding. The type of bedding used may vary according to availability. However, all good bedding material must have the following qualities. First of all, it must be dry, soft and absorbent. It must also be clean, of good quality and dust-free, as well as not harmful if eaten and preferably act as insulation. The most commonly used types of bedding are straw, preferably wheaten, wood shavings, sawdust and shredded paper. A good thick bed is necessary to allow the horse to lie down in comfort without injury, to encourage him to stale regularly, and to provide a cushioning effect for the legs when standing. The bedding must be kept clean and fresh, and damp spots removed by regular mucking out. On a regular basis, depending on the weather and the amount of use of the stable, bedding should be removed and lime spread on the exposed floor and the stable allowed to dry out. This will prevent the breeding of bacteria and risk of infection, as well as keeping the stable smelling fresh and sweet. To reduce the possibility of the horse getting cast, it is best to bank the bed up around the wall of the stable. The availability of a suitable field in which to turn the horse out will add greatly to the horse's physical and mental well-being, as well as in certain cases reduce the need to exercise. As with the stable, there are certain requirements for your horse to be both safe and happy in his field. The field must be well fenced, free of dangerous obstacles, have good drainage, shade and shelter. It must also be checked regularly for noxious weeds or plants that may be accessible to the horse. Fencing must be safe, secure and visible. Barbed wire must be avoided at all costs. And no matter what type of fencing you use, electrification is a great advantage, especially if double fencing between fields is not available. You must always remember that nothing so quickly affects your horse's condition as inadequate watering arrangements. So provide him at all times with a plentiful supply of clean, fresh water. Buckets and troughs must be regularly emptied and cleaned. Having provided our horse with a safe, comfortable and healthy environment, we must now consider the routine for his daily maintenance. The first thing to note is that generally horses are creatures of habit and are more relaxed if their daily care follows a fairly strict routine. The upsetting of a well-established routine may affect some horses to the point where they refuse to eat, lose condition, or become unsettled when under saddle. The daily routine will probably vary from stable to stable according to the differing conditions and requirements. However, there are a number of chores which must be attended to throughout the day on a regular basis. The first task each morning is to carefully check over your horse for any sign of injury or discomfort that may have occurred during the night. If he is not bright and interested in your presence, it may indicate that something may be wrong. Special attention should be paid to the horse's legs. By running your hands down the horse's legs, you can quickly check for any heat, swelling, or other injury. Straighten his rugs, and you must examine his manger for any leftover feed. Make sure he's been drinking, and that there are the usual amount of normal-looking droppings in the stable. Once the stable is mucked out, and the horse fed his morning feed, ensure that he is showing his normal enthusiasm for his feed. Make sure the horse is suitably rugged for any changing weather conditions. Heavier night rugs would normally be removed and replaced by a lighter day sheet. Prior to exercise, the horse should be tied up for grooming and saddling. A strong, well-fitting head collar should be used, and the horse should be tied to a secure fitting. He should not be tied too long to prevent his putting a foot over the rope, nor should it be too short, as this may encourage him to pull back. It is often advisable to attach a short length of strong twine to the fitting of a headstall, so that if the horse does pull away, gear breakage and injury to the horse are avoided. Care must be taken when approaching a horse to warn him first by voice and then by touch, normally on the lower neck or shoulder of your approach. This is particularly important if the horse is tied up or appears not to be aware of your presence. Never take even a quiet horse or pony for granted in this respect, as kicking or running away is an instinctive reaction to a surprise. The horse's feet must now be carefully picked out. To pick up the horse's foot, run your hand down the leg to the fetlock, squeeze the joint firmly and lift the leg. Using the hoof pick in a heel-to-toe movement, remove any material lodged in the foot and taking care to thoroughly clean between the grooves surrounding the frog. At this point, check that the shoes are secure and seated correctly. Remove any surface dirt or sweat marks using a dandy brush, paying particular attention to those parts of his body which come into contact with saddlery. To protect the horse's legs during exercise, it is advisable to use either boots or bandages. It is critical, if bandages are used, that they be correctly fitted, as injury to the tendons can very easily result. The correctly applied bandage gives firm, but not tight, even support from just below the knee or hock down to the top half of the fetlock joint. Always use a soft ganji pad under the bandage to ensure no pressure points develop and for greater protection. Tapes must not be pulled tight, nor should they be knotted directly over the tendon area. Be careful to achieve an even pressure on application by rolling from the outside of the roll of the bandage around the leg, making sure that no wrinkles occur. For most people, boots are probably preferable, being easier to fit and requiring less maintenance. Boots should be fitted with straps pointing to the rear of the horse and not tighter than necessary to prevent them slipping down or twisting around. Bell boots are advisable for any active work. Special types of boots, such as brushing boots, may be necessary to prevent injuries resulting from irregularities of gait. The saddle cloth must be sufficiently large, dry, clean, soft and absorbent. Sheepskin, woolen fabric or toweling are most commonly used and are quite satisfactory. Be careful with some synthetic materials which can scald the horse's back. Sometimes two cloths are advisable with horses with sensitive backs. Place the saddle quietly on the horse's back and let it slide back into position. The correctly fitting saddle should allow for the insertion of 2 fingers between the wither and the pommel, and its weight evenly distributed through the padded panels onto the horse's back muscles. The wither clearance should be tested with the rider's weight in the saddle. The girth should not be pulled too tightly at this stage and then taken up prior to mounting. Take care not to pinch loose skin behind the elbows. When fitting the bridle, check that the bit is correctly positioned in the mouth. This is best evidenced by a single wrinkle at the corner of the mouth. Cavesson noseband should be fitted 1 inch below the projecting cheekbone. The throat lash should allow a full hand clearance to the cheekbone, and the brow band long enough and set low as to avoid chafing at the base of the ear. When exercising your horse, consideration should be given to the following. First, that the horse is fit enough to do what you're asking of him. Damage can result by overworking a tired horse, not only to the muscles, but also tendons, ligaments and wind. Secondly, the amount of work given should bear direct relationship to the amount of grain that the horse is being fed. Incorrect balance of work, feed and fitness can easily bring on tying up or azoturia. Thirdly, make sure you finish your horse's exercise with several minutes of walking to allow him to cool down gradually. On return to the stable, if your horse is hot and sweating, unsaddle him and lead him around until he is fully cooled off. Allow him to roll. Provided the weather is warm and the horse can then be thoroughly hosed down, taking care not to frighten the horse with the hose, and starting at the lower legs and then working up. It's also easy to frighten the horse if the hose is played directly on the head. Until the horse is familiar with this procedure, it is best not to have the horse tied up while you're hosing him. Scrape excess water out of the horse's coat and dry legs around the fetlock and the pasterns in order to reduce the likelihood of greasy heel. Put on a sweat rug and leave him to dry off. If the weather is cold, cover the horse with a light rug. Brush out all the sweat when he's dry. Thorough grooming is an essential daily requirement for your horse's health, as well as his appearance. Denied the opportunity to live in a natural environment, grooming is necessary to promote healthy skin and muscle condition. A basic grooming kit contains the following items: a dandy brush for removing heavy caked dirt and mud, a body brush for removing finer dirt and scurf, and also for the mane and tail, a curry comb to help clean the body brush, a water brush, use that damp on feet and mane and tail, sponge for cleaning eyes and muzzle and dock, stable towel for the final polish after grooming, a hoof pick, a mane and tail comb. After completion of grooming, the horse's feet must again be picked out and dressed with good quality animal oil base hoof dressing. Particular attention should be paid to the coronet area, as this is where healthy new hoof growth is generated. The horse should now be rugged up and returned to his stable or field. Prior to leaving the horse, it is advisable again to check his legs in case he has suffered any injury during exercise. If the horse is returned to his stable, ensure he has a full hay net to keep him occupied. On return to the stable, prior to the evening feed, again check for injuries. If the horse is likely to swell up in the legs during the night, or the weather is exceptionally cold, or you're worried about the prospect of injury, apply stable bandages. Stable bandages are generally wider and less elastic than exercise bandages. Normally made of flannel or wool, they also should be applied lightly over gangee. You should be particularly careful in applying stable bandages, as they're on the horse for a long period of time. When fitting stable bandages, start immediately below the knee and continue down to the coronet band. The horse can now be rugged up for the night, fed, watered and given a hay net. If possible, check during the evening that he's finished his feed and is comfortable for the night. Sometime during the day it's necessary to clean tack. All tack must be clean and supple to avoid chafing and rubbing of the horse. Particular attention should be paid to the girth and boots, as any dirt not removed can quickly cause discomfort. Your ability to effectively care for your horse is dependent upon a basic veterinary knowledge that will enable you in many cases to identify a problem and to take the right course of action, whether or not it is necessary to call for the vet. There are many simple injuries and conditions which any competent horseman can safely treat himself. These treatable injuries include such things as minor cuts and scratches, provided, of course, they are not so serious as to require stitching, that there is little chance of infection, and that the horse has had his necessary tetanus injections. Other injuries falling into this category are galling, bit injuries, overreaching and cracked heels, minor foot injuries and skin irritations. A basic knowledge of hygiene and first aid will dictate the correct course of action in such cases, and a small supply of antiseptic ointments and wound lotions, cotton wool and bandages is needed. Most serious injuries and lameness will require immediate veterinary attention. These include serious stone bruises, infections in the foot, sprains, corns, tendon injuries, strains and splints. Any unexplained heat, swelling or tender area may be a symptom of these more serious problems, and the horse should not be worked until advice is sought. Any minor ailment which is not responding to treatment should also be examined by the vet. Lameness with no visible explanation may need X-rays to determine the cause. Such conditions include navicular disease, pedulostitis, arthritis, bone chips, etc. In such cases, always call the vet. Probably the most important diagnosis any horseman must make is that of colic. An untreated case of colic can result in an agonizing death in a large number of cases. The symptoms of colic are uneasiness, restlessness, looking at his flanks, kicking at his stomach, and wanting to get down and roll. Colic can be brought on by a large number of reasons, including stress, change of feed, environment of work pattern, and worm infestation. It is essential to immediately call the vet, and in the meantime try to keep the horse comfortable and warm and prevent him from rolling. If your horse appears listless, disinterested, or off his feed, it's possible he's suffering the effects of a cold or virus. Your basic veterinary kit should include a thermometer, and if he's running a temperature above 103 degrees, don't hesitate to call the vet. Never work the horse in such cases until all the symptoms are back to normal.
An early recognition of problems in the day-to-day care of your horse is dependent on a close personal relationship with him and a knowledge of his normal behaviour and personality. The development of this relationship will not only aid in the day-to-day care of the horse, but will also undoubtedly greatly increase the pleasure that you will get from him. I hope that you will get as much pleasure from your horses as I have from mine.
CEL, Communications and Entertainment Limited.